Hello and welcome to the Cupcake Gemma channel with me, Gemma. I'm here with Dane behind the camera and Nikki taking all the lovely pictures for all your socials. If you know anything about my bakery, Crumbs and Doilies, you'll know that one of our biggest sellers in the shop is the Caramel Cornflake Brownie. We're famous for it. You'll see other bakeries doing it, but it started with us guys. And I love it so much. And when I love something, I like to set it free, as you know. And so I'm going to be helping the Caramel Cornflake enter its cake era today. This video, we're talking moist chocolate sponge filled with pools of salted caramel and caramel buttercream. We're talking multi cornflakes around the sides and then a beautiful crown of chewy, crunchy caramel cornflakes. It's gonna be epic. And if you like the sound of that, please give this video a thumbs up just to let us know that you like the sound of that. Right, we're gonna start with the caramel cornflake element because this gets really hot. Caramel does, and so it needs a little bit of time to cool down so we can eat it and handle it. So I'm going to start by getting my cream ready, but I just want to tell you a few things that you're going to need first. It's really important that you use a fairly big saucepan because there's going to be a lot of stirring. You're also going to need a sugar thermometer, a long-handled wooden spoon or spatula, and then you need to prepare a baking sheet just with a silpat or greaseproof paper, whichever works for you. So I'm going to start by getting my cream ready as usual. So I'm going to put 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt in there and 1/4 teaspoon of good quality vanilla extract. And that was 150 grams of double cream. And then just give that a little stir just to get it ready. Next, pour 225 grams of caster sugar into the saucepan and then set it over a low-medium heat. Now, nothing much will happen for a while, but after a few minutes, you will notice the edges are starting to liquefy. So now you can get your wooden spoon in there and start to bring those liquid edges into the center so that the sugar can caramelize more evenly. As this is a dry caramel, we can get in and stir it a fair bit without the risk of crystallizing, unlike wet caramel. Once all of the sugar has liquefied and it's a lovely amber color, remove it from the heat, turn the heat off and slowly pour in your cream mixture a little at a time. Now be really careful of your fingers and face here as it does steam and bubble an awful lot. And then you can add 75 grams of chopped butter, it can be cold, and then stir all that in to melt it and combine it. That then needs to go back on the heat, just on medium again, and now you can put your sugar thermometer on the inside of the saucepan because we need this to heat and bubble away until the temperature reaches a very precise 116 degrees C. And then when it's hit 116 degrees, you can add your plain cornflakes. I've got 95 grams here. So just scatter those in and then just give it a really good stir. Now be really careful, everyone. This is hot, but you want to be gentle so that you don't break up the cornflakes too much. And when every single cornflake is coated in this delicious stuff, you can then pour it onto your baking sheet and then just gently level it off, not too level. Now, we're not done making caramel yet, guys, because we need to make the salted caramel, which is going to go in the buttercream. It's also going to be pooled in between all the layers of the sponge, and I think we'll make enough of it to do a drip around the edge of the cake because I don't think you can have too much caramel. So just in the same way as before, I'm going to get my cream ready. So I've got 350 grams of double cream this time. But don't forget, if you're in another country, it might be called heavy cream. I'm going to add a teaspoon of sea salt and a teaspoon of vanilla. And just give that a little wiggle. Now this time we're going to make a wet caramel. So in a medium saucepan, pour 150 grams of water, then follow that up with 350 grams of caster sugar and give it a little stir before you start. Then set that over a medium heat and don't stir it again. After a few minutes on the heat, almost all of the water will have evaporated and the sugar syrup will be beginning to colour a little. And when it reaches this beautiful amber colour, again, go in with your cream, just a little at a time. Woo! I'm glad I got my long handle spatula here. And just stir after each dribble. Just be really careful, guys. And that's done, so just pour that into a bowl or a shallow tray and leave it to cool down completely. Now it's time to get on with the sponge part, and I've chosen to do chocolate sponge because I think it's kind of reflective of the brownie part of a caramel cornflake brownie, and it's really delicious, and it goes really well with the caramel, and it's just a good idea. So you're going to need 2 really big mixing bowls because this amount makes quite a lot of batter, so make sure they're big. I mean, these are probably about as big as you can get. Maybe not, maybe there's bigger, I don't know, but this is the biggest I've got. So 2 of those, and you're going to start by sifting your dry ingredients together. So 650 grams of plain flour, then 690 grams of caster sugar, 120 grams of cocoa powder, 2 teaspoons of bicarbonate of soda, and 1 teaspoon of sea salt. Shuffle all that through the sieve and just pop it to one side. And then in the other bowl, pour 450 grams of cooled coffee, follow that with 450 grams of buttermilk, or you can use yogurt if you don't have that, 390 grams of any flavourless oil, and lastly 6 large eggs. Whisk that all really thoroughly together, and then you can add your dry ingredients to that and give it all a good old mix. And when you have a lovely, smooth, lump-free batter, it's ready. So I've already got my 4 8-inch sandwich tins greased. You don't need to line them, and I'm going to try and evenly distribute this out of my gigantic bowl. So let's see how we get on. I guess it will just remain to be seen whether I got that right. But before I get them in the oven, I'm just going to give them a little wiggle with a skewer. This just helps to get rid of some of the bigger air bubbles that might be hanging around. And you can give them a little tap on the worktop as well, just to get rid of a few more. And my oven is preheated to 170 degrees C. So I'm going to bake these for 25 to 30 minutes. I'll check them at 25 with a skewer, but they'll be ready when that skewer comes out nice and clean. While my sponges are baking, I'm going to make the caramel buttercream. Now, I'm excited for you if you've never tried this because it's so delicious. It's one of my favourites. And it's just a regular American buttercream, but flavoured with all that lovely caramel. Well, half that lovely caramel we made earlier. So, as usual, you're going to need to use squeezably soft butter. I've had mine out all morning and it's just right. So that's perfect. So I'm going to pop that into the bowl of my mixer and get that beating on a medium to high speed. And you're going to need to give this at least 5 minutes to get it to that really pale, fluffy consistency we like. Next, add 640 grams of sifted icing sugar. Now, I always do this in 2 batches, beating for around 3 minutes after each addition. And then when your icing sugar has been beaten in, it will look pretty stiff, but don't worry, because you're going to add half of that caramel you made earlier to it and beat it in, which is going to turn this into a smooth, light, golden coloured, delicious buttercream. Are you ready to build this cake? I certainly am. So I've actually trimmed and levelled all my sponges because I want them to be really neat and tidy, and if you do too, then go ahead and do that as well. There's loads of videos on the channel to show you how to do that. But I'm going to build this cake up using caramel buttercream, but also making a little bit of space for a pool of salted caramel. But to start with, I'm just going to use a little palette knife to stick my first layer on using a little bit of buttercream, like so. Then put a generous blob of buttercream onto that and spread it out into an even layer with a small offset palette knife. Then using the palette knife, remove a bit of the icing from the middle, leaving a decent border about 1 inch or so wide. Into that little hole, pour a couple of tablespoons of salted caramel and then even it out if you need to using a clean palette knife. Repeat that with all of the other layers. And then when you get to the top, put the final sponge on upside down to get a perfectly flat surface. Then give the whole cake a crumb coat, applying a generous amount of icing all over the sides and top with a big straight palette knife, and then smoothing it out and removing the excess with a cake scraper. Then just pop it into the fridge to set. Once it's chilled for at least 30 minutes and it's firm to the touch, you can apply the top coat. Just use the same technique here, applying a generous amount of buttercream onto the top and sides and then smoothing it out with your scraper. Now I've just popped my cake into the fridge just while I prepare the next bit. So I'm going to make a kind of chocolate caramel buttercream using the remaining buttercream. I've got quite a bit left actually. And some chocolate. I'm going to just pour some melted chocolate in. So I'm using 70% dark chocolate here. I've melted 100 grams. I might not put all of that in. I'm just going to sort of mix it and see how I get on. So I'm going to use little nuggets of this around the top. I'm going to create a kind of crown, and it's up to you how you want to do that, whether you want to keep them big or small. I'm just going to start by sort of pulling away little mounds and then just like roughly squeezing them. I want mine to be quite sort of freeform, I suppose, not too round, and then just pop them onto a bit of greaseproof paper just to stop them from sticking. Now obviously this is way more than we need, but that is okay because it means you can just like take it to work and nibble it on the train. Now the only other thing I've got ready in advance was my multi cornflakes, and again I've made more than you're going to need. And all I did to make that was I mixed together 15 grams of malted milk powder, such as Horlicks, with 15 grams of caster sugar and then a good pinch of salt. Then in a big mixing bowl, I poured 40 grams of melted butter over 60 grams of plain cornflakes and then tossed them all about to cover them completely. Then I sprinkled that powder over the top and gave it all a really good stir to coat the flakes. Then I poured them out onto a lined baking tray and baked them at 170 degrees C for 10 minutes before leaving them to cool and then just shuffling them into this bowl so I can eat them. So to create the band, which is going to go around the bottom half of the cake, you're going to need a cranked palette knife and a smoother, just like you used before. All you need to do is start by picking up a little bit of chocolate caramel buttercream and just applying it to that bottom section. It doesn't have to be super neat and tidy at this point. Then, using a cake scraper, gently smooth out the icing so that you're left with a smooth brown chocolatey band. Then very carefully press some multi cornflakes into this. Now I am going to be quite careful here because I want it to look kind of considered, but if you want to go ahead and smush the lot into the sides, you go for it, I won't stop you. Now I've got the rest of my caramel here in a piping bag and I'm going to create a caramel drip around the edges. Holding your piping bag at about a 45-degree angle to the corner of the cake, just start squeezing very, very lightly just so that a little bit of the caramel comes out and starts to roll down the sides. And then I've put the rest of my chocolate caramel buttercream into a piping bag with a round nozzle and I'm going to pipe some blobs around the crown of the cake, just evenly spaced. And then into each blob, I'm going to push one of my cornflakey nuggets. Oh, and there she is. Look at her. I think she's a she. I think a fitting development for our little caramel cornflake baby, and I think you're going to absolutely go nuts for it. Please, please make this, but I think I need to taste it because it just looks so good and smells so yummy. Oh gosh, I mean that just all smells so good. Let's have it. It's going to be tricky to get all the bits in my mouth. Mmm. 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 So good. Everything about this cake is just all my favourite things. Salty, crunchy, soft, sweet, caramelly, all that smoky caramel. Wow. Really, really good. Now, just a top tip, you might be thinking, could I put all the cornflakes in the middle? You can. It just does make them all a little bit soggy sometimes. So if you want to go ahead and do that because you've got extra, please do. Don't ask me about it here, just go for it. But I will say, they just tend to go a little bit soggy, whereas when you put them on the outside, they stay all lovely and crunchy and chewy and crispy and delicious. I'm so glad that I made this cake, and hopefully you are too. Please do make it. Make sure you share using #CupcakeGemma on Instagram, or over on the Bake Club, you can use our chat there. Sally's back tomorrow with another mindful bake, so if you're feeling like you just want to wind down and bake something really like relaxing and low effort but delicious, then make sure you tune in tomorrow. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do subscribe, because you can click on the notification bell, and that means every time you upload, you'll get a little beep so that you don't miss out. But I'm going to be back at some point next week, so hopefully I'll see you then. Please do join me again. It's been so lovely having you along. Anyway, gotta eat more of this cake. Bye.